So, Bill, to introduce you, you're a fellow mentor at 12 Ronnies. You've worked in idea validation and helping startups and startup teams at the early stages with their ideas. You've also written, a really interesting book. Your Inquire to Inspire: the 20 questions to mentor your innovation team to success. And I just wanted to ask you a few questions along the lines of what your book talks about, because I think that's really helpful in framing business ideas. So if I start, Bill, I've got a bunch of questions here, but if I start with when you ask your team, not what you tell them sorry, let's start again. When you say it's what you ask your team, not what you tell your team, that drives amazing outcomes, how does this apply to entrepreneurs validating their ideas?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's really kind of the whole basis of the book. I cut my teeth as a mentor in a corporate setting in corporate accelerators, and I realized early on that you can't just direct people in an entrepreneurial space just to go out and do stuff. What you have to do is you have to give them permission. You have to give them runway to do whatever it takes to learn what they need to learn. And so instead of giving them orders, okay, this week I want you to do this and you to do that and that kind of thing, what I found early on was, what do we need to learn? What could we do to learn that? And now that we've learned this thing, what does it mean for our path forward? And those kind of questions open people up instead of shutting them down. When you tell somebody to do it, it shuts them down. You got to go do this one thing. When you ask a question, and there isn't really a wrong answer, then people open up and their creativity opens up. And this translates really well to entrepreneurs. And for a lot of entrepreneurs, you don't have a mentor necessarily. You don't have a coach. So you have to function as your own sometimes. And so you have to be willing to ask yourself these questions. And sometimes they're uncomfortable, because as an entrepreneur, you may have had this great idea and all you can see is, I just want to make this idea work. Well, that can be dangerous, because there may not be a path to making it work. So,
Yeah.
So being able to ask yourself these same questions that I ask the teams that I work with is very, very important through the entire process, always questioning what you're doing and why you're doing it and the value of it.
Yeah, it's the whole questioning side that's so important to get to the crux of things and actually speaking to people and asking the right questions. You also emphasize falling in love with the problem, don't you? Not the customer so much, falling in love with the problem. What's the distinction really that's critical for entrepreneurs in this case?
Yeah, so falling in love with the problem is great because it allows you to step away potentially from the thing that you decided you were going to build when you had this idea that woke you up in the middle of the night and you couldn't get back to sleep. So you went to your desk and you drew it on a piece of paper, and you decided how you were going to sell it and how many millions you were going to make from it. So it's okay to have great ideas like that. Eureka moments are wonderful, and they're what drive us and give us energy. But it's so important to be able to step back from your idea and say, well, wait a minute. What problem is this thing solving that I think I'm going to build? And so the important thing is especially early on is to not think in terms of outputs of building things. Think in terms of outcomes. There's a customer, and I know who it is. They have a problem, a very specific problem that they know that they have, that they're willing to pay something, money, time, whatever, to solve. Okay, so now I'm going to move into that space. The idea I had for the thing I want to build might be the ultimate solution, but it also might not be. Yeah. So I'm going to put that over here for now. I'm going to put that on the shelf so I can see it and I can grab it if I need to. But in the meantime, I'm going to really follow this customer and their problem, and I'm going to learn more about the problem than even the customer does, so that I can actually enter the disruption space, a space where I build something that the customer didn't even dream of, but when they see it, they have their own eureka moment. Said, that's the thing I was looking for. All my life I've been trying to find that thing, like a smartphone. No one was out there screaming, why isn't anybody building a smartphone? Nobody was doing that. But when one was built, it solved problems that people didn't even realize that they had in ways they didn't realize they had.
Yeah, it's a typical case, isn't it, that a lot of people just want to create things and build products.
It's fun. That's Lego. Lego's built a multi-billion-dollar empire on people's love of building. But there's people spend a lot of billions of dollars on products that never meet customers' needs. There are products all throughout history that look great coming out, but nobody bought them because they missed something very special. They missed a key variable, just like I did this morning with the lawnmowers.
Yeah. Yeah, and the problem is one of the really key variables, isn't it? One of the key things to sort out. Couple of questions actually on the customer discovery side of things, the
Yeah.
fundamentals on that. So, walk us through your approach in identifying the real customer. How do entrepreneurs avoid missteps in identifying the real customer, Bill?
Yeah, when I learned about customer discovery years ago, and some of my friends were learning first, and I was watching what they're doing, and I said, that's stupid. They were going up to people on the street and they were asking questions, and they were showing them little paper prototypes and that sort of thing. I said, this is stupid. But then I tried it myself. And the first time I did it, I learned something amazing about my customer that went against my assumptions. So, as entrepreneurs, we come to a problem with a lot of assumptions because we assume we know what the customer wants. Well, 99 times out of 100, you're not actually the customer of the solution. Now, sometimes you are.
Yeah.
But even then, it's important to decouple your feelings, your emotions, your beliefs, those preconceived notions, those prejudices you may have. Get rid of all of those and just make yourself completely open to hearing everything the customer has to tell you. Because if you allow them, they will. They will, they will tell you everything that you need to know if you give them that permission to do so. So yeah, the thing for the entrepreneur to avoid then is avoiding operating on those assumptions and allow themselves to be surprised.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What about the wants and needs, the differences between that? Because you mentioned the difference between customer wants and needs.
Yeah.
Any
Well,
examples there?
wants are traditional sort of products. Needs is where we get into disruption. And the thing is, the old saying attributed to Henry Ford, which is apocryphal but still valuable, is that they say that he said, well, if I'd asked my customers what they needed, they would have said faster horses. Well, the point there is that your customer has a frame of reference, and it only includes things they've ever heard of or seen or used.
Yeah.
So when they tell you what they need, I have this problem and I need this. Well, that's fine, and maybe that's okay. But if they really knew what they needed, they would already have it. And that they don't. And that's where the entrepreneur comes in. So they want a thing, and you can hand them that thing and you might do all right, but everybody else is going to come up with that same thing too. The jump from want to need is like a smartphone. People wanted phones. Yeah, I want a mobile phone. Great, we got a mobile phone. Now we got flip phones, we got everything else. It's 2005. The disruption is people didn't even think that it was possible to take their office with them, to become productive while they were in the car, on the lake, taking their kids to school, everywhere. So understanding the needs that they don't even express, and that's what insights are. Insights are incredible because customers don't give you insights, they give you lots of data, and then the great entrepreneur puts it together. They mix it together like a great pastry chef, and they come up with something new that still reflects those customer wants, but then takes them up to that next level of need. And need is emotional, and people will grab that product like a reflex. Yes. They won't even remember that they bought it because they saw it. It was, it's a Pavlovian response.
Yeah, no, that's I've seen that lots of times actually, but I've also entrepreneurs make a lot of mistakes with the customer discovery. I mean, it's part of what we do. It's, we're trying, we're experimenting. What's one of the biggest mistakes you've seen in terms of
mistakes are fertilizer.
Understand their customers.
Yeah, there's two different types of mistakes. There's good mistakes and there's bad mistakes.
Yeah.
Bad mistakes is when you go too high fidelity in something. You build something out too soon. You make a very big assumption and don't validate it or even ask about it. And then you go into your marketplace with that. And the risk there is first of all, no one's going to buy it or engage with it. And secondly, they're going to resent you for not knowing enough about them. This person doesn't know me at all. And we've all been in that situation before. We've been sold to by a salesman or something. And you just say, this person doesn't understand me at all. They're just trying to sell me something. Now, so the good types of mistakes, sorry, I lost my train of thought because now the weed eater's up. So the good types of mistakes are where you have something that you don't know. You have a very specific learning goal. You go out and you try to learn it with a low fidelity prototype of some kind. You just show them a picture of something that you want to build, and they tell you, that's terrible. You don't know what you're doing. And you only do it with 3 or 4 people. So first of all, you only alienate 3 or 4 people. You only showed them a paper prototype. The whole process cost you literally nothing except a little bit of time. And you can always go back to those 3 or 4 people and buy them a gift card to Amazon or something and thank them for their time helping you. and they actually walk away happy about it. Like when you get a free pizza because it came too late.
No, that's go on.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No,
Bill. One second, I'll just stop the video of Mark. Yeah. So with the you mentioned validation, Bill. I've got a couple of questions on the actual process of validation. It's one of my favorite topics, trying to get to the bottom of idea validation. And you talk about behavioral assumptions, okay, and versus what customers say and what they actually do. So how should entrepreneurs structure experiments that test actual behavior? Because it's the behavior we really want to test. Because people ask. If you ask them questions, they try to be nice to you. They try to tell you what they want to hear. And they're not deliberately lying, but it can be very misleading, particularly if you're basing your startup on customers telling you things that aren't necessarily true. They're just trying to be nice to you. So the behavioral part, can you talk to me about behavior versus what they actually say? Sorry, and let me unmute you.
I muted because the trimmer guy came by. So, yeah. So sorry, what was the crux of that one again? I'm sorry.
The crux was behavior. It was really
behavior.
That's behavior versus what they actually.
Everything that matters to an entrepreneur is behavioral.
Yeah.
Buying, that's a behavior. Even looking at your product, engaging with, coming to your website, filling out a form, giving you your email, giving you some personal information. They're all behaviors.
Yes.
So all of your experiments have to be around whatever behavior it is that is going to be essential to moving you forward. The first behavior might be, hey, well, can I send them an email that intrigues them enough to come to my website? So can I get web hits? The old, from 25 years ago, how many hits you got on your website? Can I just get somebody to come to my site? So then that first experiment is simply your product is some email copy. That's it. It's email copy. You send it to them. Hey, I sent out 100. I know 80 of them were delivered, and I know 50 of them were opened, and 20 people came. All right, I got 40% of the people to come. That's not bad. Yeah. Though what it means is I may not have my early adopter customer, that customer who has the most intense version of the problem.
Yes.
But so then the next step then is, okay, I give them the website. Now, can I get them to click the learn more button or the buy now button? And even then, you still don't have to have a product there, because the buy now button, you can do what they call the old 404 test, which is, oh, I'm sorry, this page has moved, or this isn't available. Sorry, this isn't available in your country or your territory, or your city, or whatever. And so you can continue to do that kind of stuff, increasing fidelity, so that you're mapping out the whole behavior set. I got to get them to the site. I got them to get him to click this button. Now I got to get him to click that button. Now I got to get him to give me my credit card number. Now and you can actually take them through the whole buying process without ever having a product. And you can do it for free, because you can spin up a website now for free. You can buy a URL if you want for $10 or whatever, but this doesn't have to be costly, and it doesn't have to destroy you as an entrepreneur. Though a lot of entrepreneurs make this mistake, is that they don't test these behaviors. They test the product. Oh, hey, will they buy the product? Well, it's way too early for that. We need to know if we're even talking to the right people yet. Can we get them to simply change what they're doing and come to my site? So,
well, the beauty is, with the internet, is it's so much easier to test customer behavior now. It's very, very difficult, but now you can see what people are doing on screen as such, what they're clicking on, as you say. So you can, it's not, are they interested? They're interested if they're clicking on buttons. They want to go to the next stage. So as you said, you don't have to build products as such. You can take the whole sales route through to them without actually having built a product.
Yeah, and while you're doing it, you can learn about the sales process too. So you can have these ancillary learnings while you're learning about the behaviors. So yeah, it's great to be able to do that.
And once you get to the product stage, okay, so there's a lot of talk about this minimum viable product we all talk about. What does that actually mean in your framework, and how can entrepreneurs know they've got something that's testable, this minimum viable product?
Yeah, I'm kind of old-fashioned, so I stick to the original Eric Ries definition of MVP, which is the smallest thing that you can build to test your riskiest assumption. So you will have a series of MVPs at some point, that, and an MVP is always sort of a minimum complement of features and user experience and customer experience that you now believe, based on what you've learned about the customer, that you believe that you can present to this early adopter customer and they'll still take it. It's not going to look great. The old saying in Silicon Valley is, if the first version of your product doesn't embarrass you, then you waited too long to release it. It's going to be embarrassing, but not to your early adopter customer, because they've been desperately looking for a solution to their problem for a long time. And you may be the first person who's showing them something that's remotely useful to them. So that, the original MVP might be a paper prototype. It might be a Mechanical Turk sort of thing, where it looks like it's automated. Actually, but actually in the background, you're doing it. You say, hey, here's our AI. And I actually did this once with a team where they told a group of people that they had a new AI chatbot they could ask any question to, and it's going to be open for the next 2 hours. Give it a try. And so they got on there. But what we had is a really smart guy on the computer answering all the questions as fast as he could. He had carpal tunnel at the end of the morning. But sorry, the string trimmer guy is just going by now. He should be gone in a second.
He's following you, is he, Bill?
They were able to learn very quickly that if they just tell someone that this thing exists, obviously they've been looking for such a solution. They wanted something on the fly that they could, they're talking to a customer. Oh gosh, I've got this question right now. And this was 10 years ago, before the AI revolution of today. So they knew that they had a great product there. It didn't cost us anything. The AI itself was going to cost $10,000 or $20,000, but we were able to de-risk that investment by learning this simple thing in 2 hours for $0.
And it's all data collection, isn't it? Along the way, you're collecting lots of data on the product, the process, everything about the customers. Everything
is data. You take data and then you turn it into insights. Data, again, like the chef, like the pastry chef making something delicious out of ingredients that maybe aren't as delicious all by themselves. You bring all this stuff together and then you ask yourself, what does it mean? Because the customer does not tell you all the things that they're saying, doing, thinking, and feeling, what that means. You have to figure it out, because you're sort of omniscient. You're like a god with an omniscient sort of look at the world. You see everything around them. They don't. They get very myopic. They just see kind of the impact of the problem for them. But you see the environment around them, and you start seeing relationships that the customer doesn't. And then you start to realize, wait a minute, this is happening because of this. And then when you understand, that's the thing that you can then test. You test to see if the insight is right. Well, they're having this problem because of a lack of availability of healthcare in rural areas, whatever. Or some root problem there, or whatever it is. And then you can actually go and test that. You can then you design your behavioral experiments around that fact, and you'll learn very quickly whether or not you were right. And it's not a guess that you're making. It's it's sort of an educated guess, but it's always based on that data, because you have to have data. Don't drown in data. Learn to move it around. AI is great at taking customer data like that and helping you with those insights. So that's a big suggestion for me, is to drop your data into an AI and start asking it questions.
But and Bill, following that, how do you know when you've got enough data to move forward? I mean, it's a lot of entrepreneurs go, well, have I validated? Have I got enough data? Is this validated? I mean, I know it's quite subjective here.
For some people, it's never enough data. But the thing is, as long as you keep doing behavioral experimentation as you're gathering the data, you don't get stuck in a data gathering cycle. Because every time you gather some data, you have to stop and then gather the insights from it. It's like, okay, what does this data mean? I don't get any more data until I decide what the data I just got meant. Because then I'm just hoarding, I'm collecting. And data, again, doesn't tell you what to do. It tells you what's going on, but it doesn't tell you why. Why is where people come in, is where the entrepreneur comes in being able to tease out that why from all of that what. So gather small amounts of data, always stop, get insights. If you don't have an insight, if you don't know what's going on, change the kind of data you're getting. And look again, if you just keep on cycling this, it might be time to move away, because you may have a situation where either you don't have the right customer, you don't have the right problem, or there isn't a solution space that people are willing to buy in.
Is there a strong distinction between, let's say, insights and observations as such?
Yeah. Observations are what? They're what? What does the customer say, do, think, and feel? And then also, if you do what they call an empathy map, there's another little wedge in there for contradictions. So they say something but actually do something else. Maybe you're talking to somebody, hey, do you use search engines? Oh yeah, I use Google all the time.
Yeah.
And then you ask them a question about, well, how do you value your privacy on the internet? Say, oh, I'm really private on the internet. I don't let anybody know anything about me. Well, that's an inherent contradiction because Google does everything but not share your data with the world. So those are places where, hey, there's a contradiction there. There's a belief system that might be, and you're starting to develop an insight around it. Hey, there's a problem here because they don't know what they don't know, and this is potentially causing a problem. And if they understood the problem, they'd actually be willing to buy something around it. So there's the impetus for a search engine like DuckDuckGo or something like that, where the promise is, hey, well, we're not going to share anything with anybody. The insights are why. To kind of finish the thought is the insights are the why, but the observations are all that what, and what's great, but what doesn't tell you what to do. Why does. Why points directions. It's like a compass.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. Also, when should you pivot? Actually, Bill, so you've collected data, you're getting insights, you're doing all the right things, but sometimes there's a case for pivoting, and what evidence is needed there?
So there are three types of pivots. You can pivot on the customer, you can pivot on the problem, or you can pivot on the solution. A pivot happens when you have a validated insight that is basically telling you that this is not the customer, this is not the problem, this is not the solution as we believed it. Yeah. So you may start with a specific customer. This is my customer is a young woman in her 20s, and she lives in this area, and she buys these types of things, and then you've assigned this customer to this other problem that you found, and you find out, actually this young woman doesn't have that problem. But in talking to her, usually there's hints at who it is actually. Because whenever you're interviewing people, you always ask people, well, hey, have you ever had a conversation about this problem with anybody else? Yeah, my friend Sarah, wow, she's in a world of hurt about this thing. She's always talking about this and always worried about it. It's like, boom, there's your early adopter customer, and your customer who wasn't quite it helped you get there. And that's why you always, when you're talking to customers, you always ask for referrals. And they're happy to give them because they want to help other people because they see that you're trying to help this problem. So that's the customer pivot. The problem pivot is, hey, we've got a customer, but the problem that we thought they had isn't right. This is not their biggest problem. And again, in doing those interviews and observing them will show that, yeah, that's a problem. That's not the one that's keeping them up at night. It's this one over here. So then you move to that one because that's where the opportunity is. And then for solution, you got the right customer, you got the right problem, but your insights were probably wrong for some reason. And so you built something based on the wrong insight. So you come back and look at your list of insights. Maybe the right one was in there and you just need to come back to one of the other insights, or maybe you need to go back and ask some clarifying questions or dive into the data from your behavioral experiments and understand, well, why didn't they do the thing we thought that they would do? And that may point you to it not being a solution problem. Maybe it's a problem, or maybe it's a customer problem. But again, the data will point the direction. You just have to dive into it and ask yourself those questions. Why?
Wonderful, wonderful. What about then? Because most when you're starting off, when you're at the $1 million idea stage, when you're at the idea stage, you're either a solo entrepreneur or you're in a small team. You don't have big formal customer research departments as such. What's the scrappiest way to validate an idea effectively?
Go out and talk to people.
Start
with your personal network. Ask everybody you know, if you're on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever it is, describe what you're doing. Share it with the world. A lot of entrepreneurs, get an idea and then they want to, they're like a hen with an egg. They want to sit on it and hide it from the world. And they're, scared to death somebody's going to steal their idea. I tell you what, there are very few new ideas in the world. Any idea you have, 1,000 other people have had, but they didn't successfully do it. And you're no different than those other people. And then that's not an insult. It's just like, hey, we're all, we're all smart people that are capable of just about anything. But if you don't share your idea with other people, you have zero chance of somebody piping up and saying, hey, I know someone who's got that problem, or I know somebody that's working on that problem too. And then that's your opportunity to learn something very quickly. So you got to talk to people, you got to leverage your network, and then work your way out from there. Use LinkedIn, use social media, go talk to people where the customer should be. I mean, if you really understand the problem, then you should understand where the problem's happening at the right time for you to engage the customer about it, where they would take a minute to talk to you. And those are all things that as an entrepreneur, you have to be able to do. You have to be able to know who your customer is, where they are, when they are, what's important to them. If you don't know those things, then why on earth would you spend any time or money building a product? For whom? For whom?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's also important to be surprised by your customers, isn't it? It's, these surprise moments you really want to maximize because of the learning aspect of it.
Yeah, when I'm coaching a team or an individual, it's my favorite time is when they come in from being out in the field and all they're talking about is this surprise. You won't believe what Mary Jones told us this morning. Say, try me. And then my response to that is just a series of questions. They tell me what happened. I say, well, what does that mean? Why did she say it? What happens next now that we know this thing? How does it change our outlook? Are there more Marys like that out there? Or is she just one person? How do we know? How could we find out? Those moments of epiphany, of surprise, are what you feed on, because there's no way you know everything you need to know about your customer, their problem, and the solution. You have to ask questions. You have to present them with things. Present them with something terrible, a paper prototype with something terrible. Get them frustrated with you, because in those moments, they might actually tell you, well, no, what I really need is this. And yeah, that's a need, but then you can take that need and take it to that next level and turn it into, or a want, and take it to to a need. When they say I need something, they're actually saying I want. They don't know what they need.
They really don't know what they need. I mean, that's
no, they'd have it if they did.
Yeah, yeah. You say in your book, so I need to sort of start wrapping things up now on this session, Bill. But you say in your book, you talk about the versus what people say versus what they do problem. How can entrepreneurs protect themselves in building something based on what customers say they want? Because that's
always test. So when you have that empathy map, that 2x2, and it's got the quadrant that says say, all those says there, every single one of them is going to have to be tested in some way, because people don't lie to you. They're not trying to be dishonest. They're not bad people. But we're all human beings. Number one, and you mentioned at the beginning of our time today, sometimes people will tell you, like you go talk to your mother, you ask your mother, what do you think of my new product? Well, unless she's a terrible mother, she's going to say, well, that's great. I'm so proud of you. And in customers, especially in the Midwest, the United States where I live, everyone's very, very polite here. If you showed them something terrible, they would say, hey, that's pretty good. That's good. But if you ask for money, they're not going to buy it. So don't ask customers what they think. Ask customers what they're going to do. Here you go. What are you going to do now? I'm going to buy that. Great. Give me your credit card number. Here's this thing. What are you going to do now? Well, I don't know. I got to think about it. Oh, there's a problem. I missed the mark somehow. And in those moments, you're able to stop. You don't create anything more after that. Understand where you missed the mark. Is it a pivot on product? Is it a pivot on problem? Is it a pivot on customer? And again, these things don't cost you anything. One of my metrics when I work with people is I want them to survive their first idea in case it's not the best one. So everything that I'm going to do with you, if you're ever working with me, is how can we do this for $0 and 0 cents, £0, €0? How can we do this and be confident to be able to take the next step where we might have to spend a few dollars, a few pounds, a few euro. So that is my goal, is letting people survive to that next idea in case that happens to be the $1 million idea.
That's a wonderful piece of advice, and I think that's a really good place for us to just basically finish this session. Is there any other advice or one big piece of advice that you haven't talked about that you maybe want to mention to do with idea validation before we finish, Bill?
Yeah, just to kind of reiterate everything. If you take one thing away from our time today is chase outcomes, not solutions, not outputs. Chase and now a bunch of children have shown up. Another variable. So chase the outcomes. Your customer, this is jobs to be done theory. Your customer doesn't buy products. They hire products to accomplish something. People don't buy cars because they fancy themselves a car owner and they want to be in the car owning elite. They need transportation. They need reliable transportation. They need it when they need it. They need it to protect them from the rain. So they're not going to buy a skateboard. They're not going to buy a bicycle. They need a car. They're not going to use Uber because I can't get that right now and I can't have it 24 hours a day in my neighborhood. People hire products to accomplish things. So understand what they're trying to accomplish first, and then you work backwards with the customer to get that thing that accomplishes that for them in a way that they can look at it and say, yeah, that does it. Yeah, because when you look at a car, say, yep, that's going to protect me from the rain. That's going to be in my garage so I can use it any time of the day, and that's going to be reliable. And it's fast. I can tell it's fast just by looking at it. So chase outcomes. It's fun to build things, outputs, but save that for the end when you're putting the finishing touches on solving that problem for your customer.
Thank you, Bill. That's really valuable advice. I always love talking to you about idea validation.
Right back at you. We always have great conversations.
Make it so interesting. It's the most important skill an entrepreneur needs to master. It's so important. And if you're going to come up with $1 million idea, you must validate your idea first. It's the place, Bill.
Yeah,
Bill,
the biggest companies in the world have all started as humble ideas.
And Bill, do you have an offer, something that to promote to our audience at all?
Yeah, I put my website in the chat there. It's www.coachingup.us. If you come to the site, I have a 15-minute time. You can sign up for 15-minute time to talk. And what we'll do is I'll just ask you a whole bunch of questions. I probably won't tell you anything. I'll ask you a lot of questions, and we'll talk about what it is you're trying to do. And then I'll just ask you questions about maybe where some of the vulnerabilities are, some of the risks are that you could try to de-risk now, so that you don't have any unpleasant surprises later on and expensive surprises. And that's what I do. I help people so that they spend their money the right way on their ventures.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you. We've got
Thank you so much. It's great being here.
We've got a couple of minutes left for questions, if you don't mind, Bill. So if anybody's got questions...
Yeah. Can I jump in as the human teleprompter?
Yes, please.
And I won't come on screen, but I'll ask the question. We've got a number of questions in the chat. The first thing I'd like to say, though, Bill, because your book came up, maybe could you tell us the name of your book, and then I'll put that in the chat for people.
Yeah, the book is available at my website at coachingup.us.
Okay, so fine. Okay, perfect.
The book is designed for people that are coaching people. The lessons in there are good for everybody, because it's all about kind of those initial steps of validation and experimentation.
Okay, and what's the name of the book, just so that people know when they go there?
Enquire to Inspire: 20 Questions to Mentor Your Innovation Team to Success.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so here are some questions. So put to both of you, but I guess, Bill, these are probably mostly directed at you. Judy says, in terms of $1 million ideas, she would love to hear the best advice for laying out a story for a pitch to be most effective. So when you're asking your customer questions, they can see the vision that you're seeing. So how do you get across, what your idea is, I guess?
Well, you start with just a lot of questions. When you're interviewing customers, you start with a lot of questions to find out what their problems are. When they see that you're actually looking to solve the problem that they may have to some extent, they get very excited and get very open about it. What I've always noticed when I work with teams, that when they first go out to interview customers, they're very pessimistic that anyone's going to talk to them. They come back in at the end of that day surprised by what people said. People get very talkative when they see that you're in their solution space. So as far as pitching them, you don't really need to pitch your customer. You ask questions about their problem. You ask them how they're solving it now. When you're actually trying to offer them something, that's a behavioral experiment, and you'll set that up in a way that, kind of we were talking about before. You may have multiple steps to it, where we're trying to get somebody to a website from an email or from a flyer or something like that. And then we're trying to get them to push this button. We're trying to get them to give us some personal information, then maybe trying to get them to give us some payment information of some kind. And it's not always money. Remember, currency you're asking for from your customer, depending on where you are, may not be money. It may be time, it may be reputation, could be just about anything.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Okay, so the next question is from Yvonne. And she says, how do we avoid sounding like everybody else making similar claims and don't deliver, which causes people to feel that it's no different from the other stuff that they've tried? Especially important if it's a $1 million idea, because obviously you need to separate yourself from everybody else, don't you?
Yeah, we talked about the difference between wants and needs, and that's the difference between products and disruptive products. So the way that you solve that is you do need to look different from the other people in that space, but you need to not pitch. The true $1 million idea is something that if you present it to your customer, it should be something that they instinctively grab. It's a reflex. They see it. They say, that's the thing I've been looking for, not that other thing. Yeah, that was a lie. That didn't work. This is the thing. This understands me. This gets me. And people like it when you get them. And that's what you have to do. And that's what really good customer discovery does, is you understand the customer actually better than they do, so that you can provoke them emotionally in a way that they don't even realize you're doing it. Again, it's like Pavlov's dog. The dog doesn't realize that it's salivating when it sees the food, All it knows is it's suddenly hungry, and that's what you have to do. You have to show your customer that thing that makes them salivate.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Bill. And the next one, we've got about 5 in total, so we're getting through them well. Sarah is saying that when it comes to $1 million ideas, she's interested in kind of building interest in things before they launch. And she's saying, do you suggest having a wait list to gauge interest in your product before you launch?
I would insist on it. Fantastic question. A wait list is a wonderful thing to have. A wait list means that you've got people that have indicated some sort of interest. Now, what you want to do with your wait list is you want to cultivate it. You want to stay in touch with them, weekly or monthly or something like that in some way that you promised them. This could be newsletter, this could be all kinds of things, but it could be, you want to give them regularly some sort of behavioral experiment. Hey, we're getting closer to building the product, and here we are. We've got a question about it. Could you answer this question for us? So all of a sudden, you've got them answering questions for you and helping to design your product. Or along the way, you're asking for maybe more and more personal information or the last 4 digits of their credit card number, things like that. You constantly keep validating that list to make sure that they still are that group of people. So yes, get that list, allow them to co-design with you, and use those co-design moments as behavioral experiments to show that they're still engaged, they still have the problem, they really want to solve it.
Okay, fantastic, Bill. Next one, I put a question in the chat that said, what makes a brilliant idea from everybody's point of view? And Yvonne came back with a statement, which I just want to know whether, what you think of this. She says, something that solves issues at a core level for people and gets them feeling empowered and more confident in the choices they're making and the actions they're taking. So
yeah, exactly. Great idea is anything that gets a customer to their outcome. I'm in a bad place right now. I used this product and it got me to the good place. That's a great idea.
Okay, brilliant. So next, we're nearly through. Amber is saying, what sample size would you suggest is large enough for testing out an MVP or a prototype or people's behavior?
Well, you start with 1, then you go to 5, maybe 10, 20, 50. Now, as you go to bigger sample sizes or bigger groups of customers, sample size kind of implies statistical design, and statistics go out the window for early stage stuff. So don't let the marketing people or like the big customer research people pollute you at this point. They're great people and they do great work, but they do macro market work. They work with thousands and tens of thousands and millions of people. You're working with a handful of people to dozens early on. Your job is to find the early adopters, and they are by definition a tiny minority of the potential long-term customer base. So you work your way up to larger and larger groups of customers as you're identified. If you can't solve a problem for one person, a sample size of 1,000 isn't going to help you any better. So get that one person, solve their problem really, really well, and then work through them to find other people. Let those people get you to 5, and let those 5 people get you to 25. And let those 25 people get you 100. In the meantime, you'll be de-risking each step of your process. You'll be able to justify investments in website and automation to be able to handle larger groups of people, and you'll be building that business model out. Business model generation isn't what we're talking about here yet, but it happens once you start actually solving problems for people consistently, and you've got that sort of MVP product that people are using, enjoying, and are actually recommending to other people like them.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Bill. Okay, so I've got a comment and one more question, and then that'll be it. Sarah came back and said, well, when the kids got involved at your end, she said she loves the real.
Sorry.
No. She said she loved it because she works at home. She's a mompreneur at home, and she never knows when.
She probably has to deal with some chaos at home too.
Yeah. She never knows when they're going to run into the room and jump into the Zoom call. So I'm just wondering, given that in her business, there is a certain unpredictability because of her working from home. From a $1 million idea perspective, these kind of unpredictable factors. I mean, how do you cope with things like that?
Absolutely. It reminds me, I was on a Zoom meeting once on camera, and my 18-year-old autistic son walked into the room just wearing his diaper. That was funny. We all had a pretty good laugh about that. At least he wasn't naked, I guess. That probably would have been more than funny in a bad way. But yeah, the these things that come up, these are kind of like those surprises. These sort of things that come out of the blue. They are data. They are things. They're directions for you to investigate. All of a sudden, you learn something amazing, or something happens with a customer that you had no idea was going to happen. I mean, that's been my time here this morning. I've had one thing after another happen that I didn't plan on. I got the mowers, now I got the string trimmers, now I got a bunch of kids. I got some people. Looks like they're going to have lunch here. It's one variable after another. I tend to think I'm good at this. Well, it doesn't matter how good you are. If you're not the customer, if you're not living in it, you don't know what's going to happen next. So just be ready for it and be ready to say, okay, that completely destroys everything I've done so far, but that's okay, because if I kept going in this direction, it would have bankrupted me. I'm glad I found this thing out. Now I'm going to pivot and I'm going to do this other thing. And I'm going to be happy about it. Other people that are in my space maybe trying to compete with me or do this, they may not learn this as early as I do. So I'm going to be the one that wins.
Brilliant, thank you. And one last question we got from Framsig, which I hope I pronounced correctly. They say, do you have to be a customer of your own product?
No, in fact, I prefer the alternate. I've had problems where someone in a team that I'm coaching actually does have the problem in a profound way, and their emotional attachment to it prevents the team from going out and being creative, because they've already decided in their head what the solution is, and they may be a subset of the customer, but they may not be the biggest customer group that we need to go after, or the right customer for this. So, I've had situations where I've actually had to ask people to leave the team because they brought the wrong kind of energy to the team. We still kept them as a customer, as someone to be interviewed and experimented with and that sort of thing. It can be a handicap to have the problem and to not be able to separate yourself from it. I'm not saying that you can't have the problem and still be a great entrepreneur. There are countless tales of that, but it takes discipline to separate yourself and to not be emotional about that for your own self, to concentrate on that external customer.
Okay, thank you so much. I just finished with
those are great questions. Fantastic.
Yeah, thank you so much to everybody for asking these questions.